It's a pleasure to be here, representing the baby boomer set. And I do actually have Dr. Chortkoff, also a baby boomer with me in the audience, said to me beforehand, I can't believe you are considering yourself an expert on saying no. Because what I will have to disclose is that I'm a very good expert in saying yes, and that has made me an expert in how other people should learn to say no. So that's why I'm going to talk about that today. So the things I want to talk about are a little bit of why is it so hard to say no? I know all about that. Why you should say no more often and with greater confidence. I will remind you, my friend the burn surgeon Amalia Cochran always says, no is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain it. And then I'm going to work on a few tools for giving a professional, principled, and positive no. I'm just curious if some people in the audience, I'm sure all of you say no much better than I do, but what are some reasons you can't say no? Just holler it out. When you regret that you said yes, why did you say yes? Too much to do. So that's why you regret saying no, but why didn't you say no when you have too much to do? You don't want to disappoint people. Fear of retribution, absolutely. You want to help people. You're a physician. Your whole point in life is helping people. How can you say no if you're going to help people? So I think there's actually underlying all of these is that saying no is really about balancing power and relationships. So when you say no, you're exercising your power, and that's a great thing. But you know that if you exercise your power to say no too often, you might damage your relationships. On the other hand, you kind of need to tend to your relationships. If you always say yes, it takes away your ability to control your own life, and it might reduce the respect others have for you. So there's some really important reasons to say no. I got to say, this slide comes from my husband. He's a management consultant, and he works really hard to get me to say no, and I don't listen to him very well. So why is it so important to say no? Saying no is actually about opportunity. That seems a little counterintuitive, like if I don't say yes, how do I get the opportunity? The reason is if you always say yes, one day this dream opportunity is going to come to you and you're going to have to say no because you don't have capacity to take it on. I think this ties in with actually what everybody else has been saying about, what is your value, what is the one thing you want to do. So you got to think about that and say no strategically to keep space for the thing you want to say yes to. When I think about how I made decisions probably as a junior faculty member, except I was married to this guy who was a strategic guy who would say, no, that's not the way you make decisions. But a lot of people make decisions because your chair comes to you and says, I'd like you to serve on this committee. And people go, do I have time? Will I lose my job if I say no? I hear this a lot. People say, if I say no to my chair, I might lose my job. Now, my chair knows, he's here in the audience, so I've said no to him many times, and he has not yet fired me, so it's amazing. But I understand how you feel that if you don't sort of pull your weight in the department, you could be problematic for the department. I will also say that if you say yes too often and you end up not doing a good job on the work you say yes to, that puts you in much more jeopardy with your chair than being honest and saying, I just don't have capacity to do this right now. So that's commonly what people think about. It's a yes-no decision. Here's this opportunity. Do I want it? Do I not want it? Maybe I'll take it because I'm afraid not to take it. Maybe I won't take it because I don't have time. But I haven't done much more thinking than that. I think a better way is to say, here's an opportunity. Does it fit my career narrative? Sort of a yes or no. At least now you're not worried about what your chair thinks. You're not worried about whether you have time. You're kind of like, I've got this vision for where I want to go in my life. Will this help advance my vision? And so I think that's a better way to think about things. However, one of the most important things about decisions is if you're considering them as yes and no, you're missing a lot of options out there because the decision is almost never yes or no. There's often a multitude of options. And so I think a much better choice is before anybody offers you any opportunities, say, what opportunities shall I pursue? Now, I will say that the best opportunities often do not present themselves to you. You often have to go after them. And so if you're spending your time just waiting for people to come with you to opportunities and thinking about them, there's a lot of opportunities zipping by you that you would have loved, but you didn't go after it. So think about the opportunities you want to pursue, and then also think about, what am I going to get rid of so that there's space for me to pursue the opportunity I want? I will say, not owning those things and not having to get rid of as many things is easier than trying to get rid of things that you already own. The other thing I would say is, you probably have some opportunities that for someone else, it completely meets the opportunities they want to pursue, and you're hanging on to them and keeping them from doing the work that will make them feel fulfilled. So even though you feel guilty about, oh, I don't want to do this thing, remember that even if you don't want to do it, it's probably something somebody else wants to do. There are tasks nobody wants to do. You probably have to take on some of those, but you don't have to take on them all. So if you're making a decision, I think it's really important that it be based on your yes. I think in order to know what your yes is, and I feel like I'm just saying what everybody else already said, but I got a new reference for it. Create a framework for your career. What's important to you? What do you want to accomplish? What are your competing goals, and what is their order of precedence? I think one of the best two-page articles that I've ever read, the link is on this slide. It's by Linda Pololi, and it's in British Medical Journal. It's 2 pages, and it takes you through an exercise. How do I decide what I want to do? And you start out by identifying your values. I was so happy to hear values come up over and over again. I think it's really important to know what your values are, because sometimes you have values that if you set a goal, the values conflict with the goal. So I think about, say, my value is I'm going to be home every night for dinner. My goal is to win the Nobel Prize. It's possible that some of our Nobel Prize winners were home every night for dinner, but I think in general it's not. So you have to decide, is the Nobel Prize more important to me, or is being home every night for dinner more important to me? And people can decide different things. It's fine with me, but you just have to think about them. Now, once you've identified your goals, now you've got to construct a framework to think about, what are the opportunities I'm looking for? So my personal goal early in life was, I want to solve the problem of surgical site infections. Let's say a mentor comes to me and says, hey, will you write a review article on lidocaine for me? I have this Cochrane review to do on lidocaine. If I'm not thinking about that, I'd go, well, you're my mentor, I better do that. It's a publication, Cochrane's really important, I might get involved in doing it. And then while I'm doing it, I am miserable, and it never gets done, and I don't know whether. On the other hand, if I go, I want to solve surgical site infection, and I can see a tenuous relationship between lidocaine and surgical site infections, but I don't think this article is going to advance me. And if I, instead of doing that, if I spent my time working on papers on surgical site infection, that would probably advance my career and my happiness much faster. So I want to talk about a fabulous book about saying no that I recommend all of you read. Uri is the partner of Fisher and Uri, and you had Getting to Yes. How many of you have read Getting to Yes? So if you have not raised your hand, you should go home and buy that book, and then you can buy this book next. So the story of this book is really interesting. William Uri, who wrote Getting to Yes, he's a negotiation expert. His son was in the hospital as a child, and he realized the problem of saying no in that moment, because there were things they wanted to say no to the physicians about, and they were worried that if they said no, it would harm their child because the physicians would resent them, which we have all seen. And so he said, I want to think about, how do you say no and maintain that relationship? So he identified 3 steps. First, identify your interests. What is your yes? And that's a yes with an exclamation point. That's your happy yes. What do you protect or change if you say no? And what do you want to say yes to? If you're thinking about what you want to say yes to while you say no, it's a much more respectful no. Then give a respectful and positive no, grounded in your yes, acknowledge the request, explain the yes behind your no, except we all can remember, no is a complete sentence, so you do not have to explain. But if you want to maintain the relationship, it's not a bad idea. And then you can propose a yes, which is not, oh, I might agree to this later, or you can talk me into it, but, well, maybe we could do something about something different that would work for both of us. And if you're going to give a positive no, the most important part of it is preparation. You need to start by knowing your yes. If you know what you're trying to accomplish, you can say no to extraneous things. So I developed sort of because I find that people have a hard time saying no, myself included. My mom gave me a no button. I can press it and it goes, no, 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 no. It doesn't work very well, but here are some strategies I think that particularly as a junior faculty member, you could use to consider how to say no. So the first thing is I think you should feel confident you won't be fired. You're just not going to get fired because you said no to something, unless you said no to coming to work today, right? You can ask for time to consider. This is one of the most useful things you can do. Someone says, I'd like you to be on the committee. Say, wow, that's a great opportunity. Can you give me until Tuesday to give you the answer? There's a few things I need to consider. And then go talk to your mentors and your peers before you say yes. Find out, okay, the chair says it's going to be an hour a month, but let me talk to the person who did it before who says, no, it's about 8 hours a week. Like there's some information you can gather. Identify during that time that you're thinking about it an alternate candidate. And this is not someone you're throwing under the bus. This is someone who might be really interested in the opportunity, and if you take it, you're putting them at a disadvantage because they can't get to their yes. And then I think a really good thing, oftentimes it's your chair, it might be your mentor, it might be someone else. Recruit your chair as a mentor, right? If I think about the chair, they've got a little bit of a conflict of interest, right? They want the department to run well. They need to get the jobs done, so they have to ask people to do things. They also want their faculty to get promoted. Sometimes they forget they want their faculty promoted in the urgency of getting jobs done. So when they ask you to do something, one strategy for saying no is, hey, I'm thinking about getting promoted in a couple years. Could you help me understand how doing this fits in with my goal of getting promoted or with my goal of eliminating surgical site infection? And so then they kind of take that into account. It can also help you say, I need to get rid of something if I'm going to take this on. Can you help me figure out what would be worthwhile for me to get rid of? So finally, as a summary, saying no opens opportunities for your yes. So you should get really good at saying no. I just did a workshop on this at the Emerging Leaders Conference for the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists annual meeting in Kuala Lumpur. And then I got in a little bit of trouble because afterwards people said, we usually have our junior members interview our speakers, but they're all saying no, and they say, you told them to say no. So I realized that there's some caveats. It's not that I'm trying to say you should say no to everything. I'm just saying you should not say yes to everything. You need to say no strategically to the right thing. So you can't say no to everything. You cannot say no so often that others have to pick up your slack. There's some stuff to do in the world that isn't very fun. It should be divided evenly. That is a lot less unpleasant. And you should not say no because it's an out because you don't feel you're ready, right? So this is particularly true of women who are underconfident frequently in lots of studies. You don't say yes because you're afraid you're not ready. I have a good friend who a long time ago was asked to be an assistant dean. And she thought about it and she said, I don't know if I'm completely ready. I think there's some things I need to learn before I do it. And so she said no. And a week later, Jeff was announced as the new assistant dean. And she said, I'm way better than Jeff. And then she thought, of course, and they know I'm way better than Jeff because they tried to hire me for it and I said no. So ever since then, whenever she's offered an opportunity, she says, what would Jeff do? And if Jeff would take it, she says yes. So I'm here to say you got to say no. You can't always say no, but you want to say yes strategically for the right things. And you also have to remember that sometimes saying yes to a random opportunity that's a really bad idea is the right choice. So don't just blindly say no. If something sings to you in a way that you go, this is not in any way aligned with my values or goals, or it's somehow what I should not be doing, but I want to do that so much, and it feels like the right place to go. Sometimes it's okay to say yes. So, thank you very much.